One of my favorite things about eating insects, which is that if you feed them herbs, then sometimes they take on the flavor. This doesn't work every single time. It has to be something that they actually want to eat. Otherwise you're just, starving them. So I have here some mealworms, waxworms, and hornworms that I ordered, and I know that the mealworms work because I've tried that before. I don't know if it's going to work with the waxworms or the hornworms. That's an experiment. Hornworms have a little bit of a leafy chlorophyll type of a flavor, which is why I think they are an excellent candidate for herb feeding, because that says to me that they taste like what they eat. So I'm going to try to feed them some mint and some basil and some dill and see if they taste like it. Most of the time hornworms eat tomato leaves, so I need to get some of those from my garden, and that will be like the control hornworm. Hornworms are a really beautiful color. Nice little blue. Come on, little guy. Come on. Let's give you some basil to eat. A huge bag of mealworms. This is actually not my favorite part. I like to eat bugs, but I'm not generally super excited about plunging my hand in a bag of bugs. You don't really need to use a spoon. I'm just being squeamish. I don't really like having a big handful of worms. I'm tossing them in the herbs. So we've got a bunch of waxworms in there with some honey and cinnamon. We're going to see if they like to eat it and if they take on the flavor. Today we are going to do the next step in herb feeding mealworms, which is we are going to separate the mealworms from the herbs. So what I usually do is I have them in their container, which they've been in for a couple of days, and I removed the moisture sources like a carrot or a potato or what have you, and I pour some of them in a strainer and I kind of sift out the herbs a little bit, and they make it kind of easy for me. If you want to come see, they make it kind of easy by trying to crawl up the top. They separate the worms from the herbs and from their skins, and also from the occasional little guy that didn't make it. You don't want to eat that one. And then I will put this in the freezer for about at least half an hour, maybe a couple hours. And so I dump them in a bag and put them in a big freezer in the back. And then I just leave them there until I'm ready to boil. For little tiny bugs like mealworms, I like to put them in a strainer so that I can just lower them into the boiling water, and it'll make it a lot easier to fish them out later. Spread them on the foil pan for when I'm ready to roast them. You don't need to use any kind of oil with worms. They're actually fatty enough that you don't need to even put any oil on the bottom. You just need to kind of spread them out so that they won't stick to each other. I made a balsamic reduction by just boiling some balsamic vinegar for bringing it to a boil and then simmering for about 20 minutes. And these are basil-fed hornworms, so they have a little bit of a flavor of basil. Now is the moment to drink. Pretty good. You want to try?